Life over coffee after many, many months. I suppose to put it in contents, the reason I've been absent is because I've been sick. Oh, well, 5, 6 months ago, I got sick and came down with Bell's palsy. It's a virus, so I'm told. And I looked like a bad Picasso. I didn't take any photos of me. My family and friends saw the what happened to me, and eyebrow up, one eyebrow down, this eye sagged, this part of my mouth sagged, uh, and I had to persevere with it, and I was only talking out of one part of my mouth. Swallowing was difficult, maneuvering stuff. You lose 65% of your tongue motion and stuff. So yeah, it was a bit. Ugh. So, and then I got a flu, really bad flu. So I got a double virus whammy. And if you understand what a double virus whammy really means, it means that you end up with a degree of chronic fatigue. So I'm starting to get some energy back. Yay! Never thought it would happen, but anyway, it is. And so today is a good day. And I've been meaning to do this update for a while, especially as you can see by the title. I really wanted to put it, sort of life over coffee when the world turned to shit. But I don't put it down as a war. I put it down as a conflict. And I'll say it out loud. Trump decided to initiate some stuff without approval from the world and stuff, and now he's going to be tried to be made out to be the hero. But in the meantime, we are endeavouring to adjust stuff. So I want to tell you about my adjustment, more and what I've been doing and why I've been doing it and how it all started. And it started with a little bit about a story, and I think I've mentioned it before that my grandfather, actually I'll start it with, I've been watching a prepper. Her name is Sutton Davies, I think. She's right in print, but she's very, very down to earth, and I would recommend you have a listen to what she's got to say. She's on YouTube. She's not a person that is all about doom and gloom. It's about preparedness more than anything. How you keep your head when the rest of the world's not keeping theirs. So and it reflected to the story about my grandfather. And prior to the Second World War starting in Europe, he used to listen to the BBC News, and that, which is, I think he was in Yugoslavia at the time, or what is now Yugoslavia. And so he took notice of the signs. So what he did is he moved his children into one bedroom and took control of one of the rooms in the home and started to gather um, gather salt and rubber goods. So that was bicycle tire repairs, bicycle tubes, repair kits for for cars, soles for shoes, a whole heap of stuff. So he worked it out that people are still going to eat. They're still going to need to preserve. And so salt is why he went that way. And rubber goods was people are still going to need soles for the shoes. They're still going to need to go from cars to bicycles. And he started prepping probably about 6 months before the war actually broke out in Europe. And that's what he used to barter with right through the years of conflict. Now, I used to have a story that went with dinner parties, and try it if you have a gathering together and ask them, what would you do? Because this is sort of what's happening now. What would you do if you had 6 months to prepare for a time of adversity that could last for anything, 3 years? 1 year you can normally get through, but 3 years, 3 to 5, what would you put into place now? And I suppose that is where all of my thinking actually started. So something that actually says, look for signs. Look for the signs that something is coming. There is some shift that's actually happening with the local economics of stuff. So I took that in hand and I did start looking at signs. And a couple of them was, well, one was immediate because as soon as the conflict started, we the fuel prices just they were jumping literally 5 and 10 cents a day, and that for a couple of weeks. And that, so I mean they've come down a bit now. Government's got involved, but that's only the beginning of it. This is still going to escalate a lot more. We've got diesel shortages, and I suppose I'm saying this for posterity because there's going to come a time we're going to come back and look at this. The other sign that I actually looked for was the word sale. Now, all of a sudden, Facebook, TV, in the shops, whatever, there's a whole heap of sales going on. And, be reminded, a sale is not a sale unless you need it. That's number one question. That's number one. So I noticed there's a whole heap of sales. When I went into the shopping centres to, do my groceries and stuff, I started seeing, aisle after aisle with not just a few, but a number of items that were 30, 40, 50% off. Not necessarily, and some of it was items of your basic pantry. I noticed about 3 months ago that the price of rice had dropped dramatically. I use one particular rice that comes in a bag, and that had gone down to like half of the price. So I actually did initially I got one bag, and then, a month later I got another bag. So I ended up having 2 bags of rice. Rice we use a lot. So, but that's not where it sort of finished, because then I sort of started noticing that the shops are putting autumn prices. What's an autumn price? Is that a sale or is that not a sale? So they were my initial signs that I could see that things were changing, and yet we hadn't had that, beside the fact that we had the announcement that fuel's going to be short for a while, that I could actually see that the um, places that we buy food, or places that we get groceries or whatever, are starting to get on the bandwagon of when something is a sale, and especially when it's dramatic. Past history has shown me that that item is about to jump in price because they're just trying to get rid of the current stock, or that item is going to be in short supply or not supplied at all. And if it's one of my favourites, then I would get a couple. I don't go into having a huge pantry for a number of reasons, but that's a bit changed now. So I then decided to divide my energy into a couple of things. One was, what am I going to need in the next 3 months? Relatively urgently, that I would probably start preparing for in about a month's time. And that item was wood. Now we have a wood fire, so I started with my kindling. I was actually a month earlier doing that type of thing. I actually asked my usual wood supplier, because they only had one pile of wood, red gum, which is my preferred. And I sort of said, when are you going to be getting more stock in? And do you know what the price of it's going to be as an indicator? Because currently red gum was sitting on about $5.60 a tonne, which is a lot of money. We use about 3/4 of a tonne per winter season. So, and he said, don't know. Now, part of what he didn't know is because a lot of our wood actually comes from interstate. Interstate, they've actually had a lot of flooding and, a lot of rain and stuff, and that is to get the wood and transport. The other part of it was that they didn't know is because they knew that there might be a fuel issue. Trucks use diesel, and how many trucks loads were they going to be expecting? They didn't know, and they normally don't fill up. Now this is early March, and they normally don't get all of their stock in until late March, first week in April. So that's okay. So I decided I'll have a look and seeing any other source of wood that they'll actually be. I did find another source who had lots of wood and that, but it was blue gum. Blue gum burns hot, burns quick, but it was a lot less per tonne. And then I needed to make a decision on, within a fortnight, I made a decision. I will pay for the 1.2 tonnes that's what they deliver, and I'll pay for delivery because that will save us having to go and collect and unload and go and collect. I'll deal with it when it gets here. So I actually got my wood a month earlier than I normally do. With it, will it last? Don't know. I will probably get some red gum locally. So anyway, so that was part one. What is it that I'm going to need? That I need to look at now, because there could be a supply or a price issue. So I did that. My next thing came about the fact that I ended up having a bad stomach, really bad stomach pains. I'm not sure if it was an ulcer, that's how it felt, or was it gallstones or whatever it was. And I was a heavy coffee drinker, and I needed to change something. So I went to the supermarket and I thought, right, I'll get some chamomile tea. That will help my stomach. I know that it will help my stomach. Not overly fond of chamomile tea in a big way because of the flavour, whatever. And then I noticed when I went that there was one particular brand of tea that had been reduced by 50%. And I went, oh, I'll get it, I'll get some of that. But while I'm here, I think I might think medicinal. So I went on the thoughts that I'll get some medicinal things, which I did. So I got some chamomile tea, peppermint tea, ginger and lemon, for my stomach. And if you've got stomach issues, they're really, really good medicinal teas to actually have. I did get myself some normal tea as well. And when I got on this thought of medicinal, what is it medicinal that I can actually get? I then went back and I actually got more and stuff, because I know that I won't be getting what is normally, $7.50 for $3.50 for a box. I won't get that bargain again. My tea that I normally buy for myself is around $8 a box, because you go for your preferred. And this particular brand was good. It was very, very good. So I ended up doing that with my shopping. And then I got into the thought of, I don't want to be a prepper. My daughter calls me a prepper. I'm not a prepper. I'm being prepared. So in that week, I decided that I did the shift from medicinal in thought to start with. And I thought, okay, what am I going to need in the next month? So this is above normal shopping, things that I would run out of, because the fuel prices were jumping so quickly that I thought there might come a week, and it could be 2 weeks, where I need to make a decision between where am I putting that $20, $30 because of washing powder or dishwashing powder or, toothpaste, underarm, whatever it is. if I need to make a decision that week and it's shopping week between buying that or putting fuel in the car, and that where are my loyalties going to lie? And we will need fuel to make sure that I have a quiet house during the day and the man is out working. I think that's probably what it is. So I ended up spending about $120 on some incidentals. So washing powder, dishwashing liquid, underarm deodorant, toothpaste. What else did I actually buy? Coffee, his favourite coffee, some tinned food, and we'll go into that food section in a minute. So I've got some tinned things that I know that I can make a bit of a meal with. Um, and I put that into a box. And honestly, the box isn't very big. It's probably a foot and a half. Anyway, it's not very big. It's just one box full of toilet paper, extra tissues, extra. So it's just sort of what will fit into that box. Pretty much that's what I got. And then I went and did the same for my daughter. And so what was my $120, $30, because she's a family of five, turned out to be $230 because I did the same sort of things, except she's got three dogs. So I got dog food, cat food, extra underarm deodorant, extra tinned stuff with tin protein, toilet paper, female personals, there, and that though those groups of things came to $230, and that I think I stopped at 230. It could have been 250, but because you can go silly on that, and all I wanted was a little bit of basic, bit of flour, bit of this, bit of that. Not to be used necessarily during your normal shopping week. You still shop, and this is what Sutton says: still shop. Do while you can, get while you can. And eventually, the aim is to get initially 2 weeks supply ahead of what you've got. And then after that 2 weeks, then you try to get another 2 weeks ahead of what you got. Trying to get into the 3 months. Now, admittedly though, in America, they're going into a summer, which means peak growth. They're going to have, the cows are still milking, plants are still growing, but it's about getting those supplies to a local, accessible location. So, I did a bit of an order of what my pantry is like. And yes, we're going to be paying more and, stocking up and buying, 20 tins of peeled tomatoes. It's not the name of the game. What it is that taking some pressure off the initial. So that's where that sort of laid. So when I go and do shopping, I will buy um, baking soda and vinegar and that, because that's part of my cleaning stuff. So I have a bit extra, remembering that these items might start getting a bit short in supply. Extra items like eucalyptus, stuff for cleaning and doing health. There are certain things you can't go without. Um, did I buy, 20 rolls of toilet paper? No. I have got, one multi-packet, and that's when I started to notice to trying to get the smaller packet of multi-packet toilet paper, because all the big packets were gone. Um, Flu season's coming, and this is where we went into the medicinals. I realised that flu season's coming. We're going into an Australian winter in the south, and we're going to need like extra tissues. So I buy 2 boxes of tissues. I'll shop, regardless if I need it or not. I'll buy toilet paper regardless if I need it or not. I buy my water soluble eucalyptus regardless if I need it or not. I use it in my washing machine with my washing. I use it for cleaning, doing the floor. I use it for a lot of things. So that way I've got a little bit of a stash. I'm going to have a huge stash because these are the items that I turn over all the time. And this is what Sutton says: get your basics and a little bit extra. That's how you sort of work it out. And then I sort of went into this medicinal frame of mind. Medicinal frame of mind was I did do a bit of an audit and stuff. Do you know how many packets of Panadol? They may be not our preferred brand, I can tell you. And that, but how many half a packet's bit of a packet of painkillers, ibuprofen, Panadol, that sort of stuff. Not saying that we're not going to be able to get it, but what is the cost of those items going to be? So I've got a little bit of a stash. Um, and I've got a bit of a stash of, and that's when I went medicinal. I thought, right, cold and flu season. So I ended up looking at some of those herbalists and that who do medicinal herbs on YouTube, and I did look at a couple of them. One was probably better than another, and he happened to talk about cold and flu. So, what sort of herbs do we need for cold and flu and stuff? One part of it is about us being able to endure and get over it. Another part of it is what is going to make some of the symptoms a little bit easier. So there were things like, sort of chamomile, sage, and which I actually did go and get in plant form. So I'm sort of ready. Too late this season, but I'm going to do a little medicinal herb section in my garden for the future, and what teas and things that I can actually get. And I happened to come across a herbalist who comes to our market who got me some millen, who had millen, which is for coughs, and which you brew as a tea. It's not something you take every day. It's just something that will actually help the congestion. So I looked at my list. I did take a list of different cold and flu assisters, and another one was lemon. Now, at the moment, lemons are quite expensive because you're buying them each, but then also too, people have lemon trees. So I decided that I will buy 2 lemons per shot. I don't necessarily cook with lemons, I only have it as, a drink usually, but I'm freezing the lemon juice in ice cubes, and that will give me, I don't know, 2 dozen with the 2 lemons. I'll get 2 dozen um, lemon cubes, and that can go into a pot of, to put it into a pot, that because it'll be too much for a cup, unless you want it particularly strong, and mix some honey in it, and I'll talk about honey in a minute. So I've been building up medicinal lemon cubes that to use during the cold season, because lemons, like other citrus, have natural aspirin in them, and they all have natural antihistamine. So this is why when you have a lemon drink when you've got the flu, you actually feel soothes with that lemon and honey, and you actually feel quite good, that because it's got natural aspirin in it. So I've been slowly building up a bit of stock, and when I get what I think is comfortable for me, I will start doing some cubes up for my daughter, for her family. So the next part of that was, okay, we're going to go medicinal, and of course, what goes medicinal is honey. Honey. Now, the honey that are in shops that you buy is either watered down or heat treated, which is not any good for medicinal honey. Manuka honey is very expensive, small jar, and that you're paying average $30 for a small jar of medicinal Manuka honey. But the Manuka honey is not the only honey that is actually medicinal. So you just need to, I went to the market, I talked to the honey guy there, and asked him how does he process his honey, how does he do his honey, and specifically, do you heat treat your honey to extract, extract or pour or whatever. I didn't want anything that had heat in it. So he said, no, I don't do any of that. He had some blue gum and something else, honey, at the time he was going to be harvesting, some red gum soon, and the red gum's better than the blue gum. It's fine, and the taste is fine, because some honeys, especially when they're harvested from, indiscriminate areas, the bees will take whatever, but I've had some honeys which taste like hay, not me. So I got a small tub. I got a tub like of honey, and he said this will candy, which is fine, which shows that it's not been heat treated, and that I will keep it separate from my other honeys. I'll have honey for cooking and just flavour. That's fine. Just buy that. But the medicinal honey will be kept for during the winter, and also too, medicinal honey can be put on sores as well. It's a healing agent. So this is why I sort of went medicinal. And then I also went to the gardening place and got some herbs for later because, as I said, I'm going to start a little medicinal patch that I can make a tea that can sort of do for stomach or whatever. However, I'm mainly going to use it for. I'm not going to go into being a huge herbalist, but I know what works for me. So the next part after that was, what can I grow that's a quick return? We're lucky we're coming into the beginning of autumn, so the ground is still warm. We are getting some cold days, whatever. Good days, cold days, rainy days. So I looked at what is green that grows relatively quickly. So I got some silver beet because I got a few of that and also shared with my daughter. And that I know that I can make my own pasta, bit of garlic and some spinach and a bit of butter, put it together. That's a meal. I can do a meal like that. I'm lucky I'm a cook. I can do that. The other thing was what's quick growing and stuff. We're coming into winter. People are planting, the broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower. No, I know. I've got limited space to start with, and they are a very slow growing crop. And I want to get through the next 3 months, realizing that if anything, the conflicts, I don't want to call it war. If the conflict stops tomorrow or today, it will be 6 weeks before we'll notice any benefit from it. So I want things that will grow quickly. So I started watching what did they eat, what did they grow during the Depression, during when World War II was going. So spring onions is one of them, and there's silver beets another one. The snap beans or snow peas, you can grow them now. That's another one. It's about keeping up your greens. So I got some bok choy. I think I got pak choy because I couldn't get bok choy in seeds, not plants. Too expensive to do it that, because also seedlings have jumped in price as well. So they're heading towards $5 a punnet. And also too, that's like COVID. They're undersized as well because they're pumping them out as such. So I did put in some pak choy. Now pak choy is 5 to 8 weeks that you can actually start eating it. You can peel it like you do silver beet. And I have planted other things which I know are a bit slower growing. Beetroot, because I can use the leaves with silver beet, make things a bit different. So that is what I've been doing. And it's not saying that I have finished, but that initial task of being prepared, the preparedness and that. So now I'm looking into what did they eat during the Second World War? Cheap meals. Cheap meals is what I'm looking at now. Protein. How do you get protein in your diet when there's no meat's expensive? What's the other proteins that you can actually do? So this is just a little bit of my preparedness. I don't know. Maybe it will work for you as well. And this is sort of a little bit of a memory thing, like my grandfather, being prepared with salt and rubber goods. This is what I did during this period. I reckon July is going to be a very, very tough month. Our leaders will do the best they possibly can, but I think Australia-wide, because we're going into winter, especially July is going to be tough. And so that is the month that I'm preparing for. This is Life Over Coffee. Hope you enjoyed it. Catch you later.